We will facilitate today's webinar. This month's topic is defensible space, and in a few moments I'm going to introduce our speakers from Kern County Fire and Southern California Edison, who kindly partner with Kern Fire Safe Council to bring us the latest in safety information. Now, living in California, you might experience a natural disaster like a wildfire or earthquake or flood, and creating defensible space is part of disaster preparedness. Another part of that thing is being ready to leave or quickly being able to shelter in place. Now, the question some people ask is, what should you do? Because you got to remember, you are the best person to help yourself or your family prepare for disaster. And you can begin by following these 5 simple steps from Listos, California. Number 1 is get alerts. You got to know what's going on. And you can start by signing up for Ready Kern to get disaster alerts, along with television and radio and things like that. Number 2 is make a plan. Make a list of contact information for all the people you might need to reach in case of disaster, and share that list with your family in case you are separated. Also, share how you will evacuate and where you can all meet up. Also, in an emergency, if possible, practice your evacuation plan. Now, step number 3 is, what is a go bag? We've all heard the stories of suddenly the knock on the door, the sudden need to evacuate. And so just in case, before you have to get out fast, put together a go bag or a bug out bag with your most important items, including documents, medications, glasses, flashlight, money in small denominations, a first aid kit, an emergency radio, warm clothes, a sleeping bag, water, lots of water, emergency food, and put an extra phone charger in there. Oh, and don't forget your phone. And step 4, if you're stuck and you can't get out, roads might be closed, power may be out, you might be on your own for several days, sheltering in place, but don't worry, put together a stay box. Include basic supplies like food that won't spoil, water again, medications, glasses, a flashlight, radio, your phone, and trash bags, things like that. But try to store enough to last 5 to 7 days. Now, your go bag and your stay box, all that stuff is going to overlap, but well, that's fine. It's better safe than sorry, right? And step 5, help others. You see, now you're prepared. You put your bag and your box together, and now you're part of the solution, not part of the problem. So you can be ready to assist those around you who might not be able to help themselves during a disaster. Remember, if an emergency occurs, to stay calm, reach out to the community, and follow the directions of the sheriff, the fire department, and local officials. And you can access all the information I just mentioned on our website, kernfiresafe.org. Click on resources and then Listos. Now, all that said, it's on to our speakers. First up is Andrew Freeborn, Kern County Fire's Public Information Officer, and engineer Matt Redstone, who will speak on defensible space. Now, they will take questions at the end of that, followed by Brian Sprinkle, Southern California Edison's project manager, with more defensible space information, also followed by a Q&A. And please put your questions on Facebook Live or in the Zoom chat room for Julia to read. So without further ado, here's Andrew Freeborn and Matt Redstone.
Thank you very much for that introduction, David. Those points that you had mentioned are certainly very valuable for all of us that are living in these communities, because you're right, there is a chance, whether it's a fire, flood, mudslide, earthquake, whatever it may be, we have to be prepared for all of those things, natural or man-made. I know that Engineer Redstone is going to be able to speak in detail about the hazard reduction programs and the defensible space that's created when individuals are caring for that process. But really, that point is in line with the other things that you mentioned. There's so much that we as individuals can do, and as individuals in our communities, as we're all working on these things that aren't enormous things, they're within our power, and we have great dignity to be able to fulfill these things, to create those go bags, the stay boxes, to make sure that we're registered for emergency notifications. So I like to just remind everyone, if they haven't, within Kern County, readykern.org or .com, either way you go, you're going to get there, is your one-stop shop to be able to register free of charge for emergency notifications. Another thing that we also recommend is to go to smart911.com, or on the kerncountyfire.org website, you'll see a link to Community Connect. Both of those platforms, Community Connect and Smart 911, they give an individual an opportunity to register their personal information in a very secure setting. The persons can put as little or as much information as they want there. For example, let's say I have a certain health problem and I'm being treated for this, and I have medications that I take for that. But if I were to call 911 during a medical emergency and then pass out and there's no one at home, is there a way for these individuals that are responding to your home, these first responders, can they know what your medical history is or what medications you're taking, which would help them in whatever they're going to do to assist you on scene? Those are things that individuals can list on those platforms. It's nothing that we can access if we just drive by your home and go, hey, I wonder what they got going on there. Click a couple buttons. It's not possible for us to access it that way. An individual would actually have to call 911 from their cell phone that they have registered. And when they call from that number, it allows the dispatchers, it pops up on the dispatcher screen, that information that the person left there, and it's able to be forwarded to those responding firefighters. So this is critical in helping provide the firefighters and first responders information, and that would be the Community Connect or Smart 911. For you to receive notifications, that would be Ready Kern. So certainly look into those along with preparing those go bags, evacuation strategies, stay box, all of those things so that you are ready. You're part of the solution, not part of the problem if there is a natural disaster of some kind. In line with all those things, of course, we're thinking in our mountain communities especially, and that is defensible space, hazard reduction, making sure that your property is fire safe. And that is what Engineer Redstone is here to speak on behalf of the Kern County Fire Department about.
Thank you, Andrew. I appreciate that. Hello, my name is Matt Redstone. I've been on the department for approximately 20 years. I've been doing hazard reduction for about 3 of those years. There's 2 of us that work the office. So the main point, because we could discuss this for hours if if we had the time, but is that we can't do this without the community's help. We have information, we have the directions on where to go, but we can't be everywhere all the time. It really is a partnership between the Kern County Fire Department and the residents. I can say this year has been different. We've had a lot of outreach from various CSDs and HOAs in the mountain communities, and they're all very eager to learn about hazard reduction, which is good and encouraging. And my partner and I are always happy to be here and always happy to have a conversation about it. That being said, I just attended a training session this last week, and was introduced to a new program, new to me, excuse me. I believe it's actually been out for quite a while. That is, the goal of the program is to have communities who are interested in enhancing their hazard reduction come together as a community and enhance what the fire department does. like I said, we can only do so much. For those of you who are interested in looking it up, it's you can Google FireWise. I believe it's NFPA FireWise. This is mostly a residents, citizen-run organization where they have little communities such as HOAs and other citizen groups who are willing to accept the responsibility. Hazard reduction is ongoing, it's ever changing. With the several tragedies that we've had over the last few years, there's a lot of legislation that's being discussed. And in fact, I know of at least one major change that'll be taking place in 2023 to the hazard reduction guidelines. I think it's important to note that these changes come from the state. We're just the facilitators. We, as a county, can modify those, but we cannot make them less restrictive. We can only make them more restrictive, which we rarely do. Our mandates come straight from the state. That being said, we also our main goal is safety, is your safety, our safety. And so in customer service, we want to work with you guys to accomplish the goals. You can find a lot of the information, such as the current guidelines on spacing and requirements, on our website, as Andrew mentioned, kerncountyfire.org. There's at the top in a blue banner, there's a hazard reduction tab. If you click on that, there's a laundry list of items will come down. There's a real nice graphic explaining the current clearance zones, which in summary it's a 100 feet clearance zone from a structure, and it's not necessarily a house. It has to be bigger than 120 square feet. So, but it can be a garage or a barn or, something along those lines, as long as it meets the requirements. And we have two zones in those. The first 30 feet from the house out is the most restrictive. We understand people move to the mountains for the natural beauty, and we're not trying to disrupt that, of course. But but we ask that you keep the weeds down, the dead brush cleaned up, trees limbed up 10 feet. Mostly, if you're going to have shrubbery, to have them spaced so they're not in a continuous patch where heat can build up. We also ask that if you have firewood, which most of you do, you keep that out of this 30-foot zone. That doesn't mean it always has to be like that. We don't want you walking 30, 40, 50 feet in the snow to get your firewood. But once things start to heat up, we ask that you keep at least a large storage pile that you keep year round away from the house. We ask that you keep propane tanks clean and clear of both wood debris and annual grasses. And then keep your roofs clear of vegetation, leaves, and pine needles. Make sure there's no overhanging branches from your trees over chimneys or other heat sources coming from the house. We currently don't have any requirements as far as trees themselves, other than to have them limbed up at least 6 feet off the ground. So we never ask to remove trees, whether alive or dead. We would not at this time. We don't ask that. And you can get more detail again on our website for the 30-foot. The extra 70-foot is a less restrictive. So more trees, more plants, are allowed. There is fire safer plants such as succulents and those kinds of things, which have a higher water content. I'm not sure how well they do in the freezing months, but there are options. It's the same basic requirements, just much less restrictive. The other thing to note is that if you have a vacant lot, and this causes some significant confusion. If you have a vacant lot and you have a neighbor's property that has a building that's over 120 square foot within 100 feet of your property, it's required to keep a 10-foot fire break along the fence line. But that's it. You don't have to clean the interior. You don't have to, mow any grasses beyond that. And additionally, if you have a vacant lot that is next to another vacant lot, there is no requirement. It causes a lot of confusion because we send out an annual notice, which actually should be sent out at the end of this month. And it's just a courtesy notice to let people know that the program is starting. We send it out to every property owner in the county of Kern, which is in the SRA, which is approximately 45,000 properties. That includes vacant lots. And we just get those names off the tax rolls. So just because you receive that notice doesn't mean that you are required to comply with the hazard reduction guidelines. If you are, like I said, if you have a neighbor that's over 100 feet away from you, or if you have a neighbor that has no other structures on their property, then there is no requirement. The process will start on January 1st from our fire engines, as always, where they will begin their inspections. Again, our job is to educate and get grant clearance. So if there's ever any questions, we encourage you to call us or email us. We have a hazard reduction at kerncountyfire.org email address that you can use. That's probably preferable because once the notices get out, of those 45,000 homeowners, sometimes it seems like 40,000 of them are trying to get a hold of us on the phone. It's a pretty hectic month. So, we're here to help with that. But we need your help as well. I will say the one thing that we are looking for in the hazard reduction program, we have three main areas of that we struggle with. Is people who are low income, people who are elderly and physically can't do the work, and absentee property owners. So that is our constant. We are constantly making efforts to build relationships with either HOAs or CSDs in an effort to get that information out to people. The fire councils are they're relatively new to me, but they are a valuable resource. So I believe that's really all there is to say about it. I will say this, we do have a couple of new laws that have been passed. They've just not been enacted. And it will affect mountain communities in such a way that I will bring them up now. We don't have a concrete plan in place yet on how it'll be enacted. I just know that they exist, and I just want to, bring it to your attention. So starting in the next year, if you are selling your home and you're in the SRA, which, by the way, if you have any question about whether your house is in the SRA, that can also be found on our website. On the front page, there's an SRA. It's a link to an SRA lookup where you can put in your address or your APN and find out if you're considered in the SRA. But if you were in the SRA and you were to sell your house, you have to have on file a current hazard reduction compliance. So if there's any violations that can interfere with the sale of your home, and that has to be within 6 months. So if if you sell your house and it's November, you may not have a current, basically what the program may take more than just the summer months is basically the point of it. So it's something to be aware of. We're working on a plan to work with escrow companies to make this as seamless and painless as possible. But it's something to be aware of. And then the other one that seems to be a bigger deal, and I had a meeting with CAL FIRE 2 weeks ago, excuse me, and they are just beginning their campaign, their educational campaign, is that in July of 2023, beyond those two zones that I spoke of in the beginning, the 30 and the 70 foot, the state will require an additional from the edge of the house, 0 to 3 or 5 feet, I'm not entirely sure, of what is called an ember free zone. So it will be not necessarily down to bare earth, but it could be, if you have a flower bed with mulch, or if you have, plants with a high oil content or something like that, it may be something to prepare for. It's just something to be aware of that could be coming. Again, our department, we're not into punishing. It's the last thing we want to do. We're into educating, which is why I'm trying to get the word out now. And I'm sure our bosses, because we're advocating for it, would have a grace period. So with that being said, if there's any questions, feel free to ask. But I believe that's the gist of our program.
Thank you very much. Julia, are there questions for Andrew and Matt?
There are questions, and let me just check Facebook. I don't see anything there. But what I'd like to say to everybody is I have some questions that I'm going to ask. Some of these came from our listeners. Some of them are me asking for clarification. And if you have a question that I don't touch on, when I'm done with my questions, we'll open it up to you to ask your questions, and you just have to unmute yourself to ask a question. So here goes, and these aren't in any particular order. But the things I would like clarification on, Matt, you mentioned hazard reduction compliance. Is this some kind of certificate that we get, and where do we get it from?
That's actually one of the things we're working on figuring out. Because normally right now what we do is you are considered in compliance unless we see a violation, and then that's when we generate paperwork. So it's kind of a default in compliance, but we have no paperwork per se. It's all on a computer program that we keep records of, and then it's right now it's subject to Freedom of Information Act requests, which is a very clunky way of getting that information. So we have a lot of meetings in the next 6 months to streamline this. One of the things we are thinking about doing is doing an online portal, which will just keep your record of whether you have it or not. And then there will be a link to email us so that we can set up an appointment to come out and get that certification should you need it.
Okay, that would be good. Okay, and then the other thing I wanted clarification on, you were talking about the lot next to you, whether there's a house there or just a vacant lot, and if the person's not there, do we have to clear 10 feet on their side of the fence, like their property?
No, that's a good question, and we get that a lot. So we would never ask you to go on privately owned property that is not owned by you. So it would be the vacant lot owner who would be required to do the clearance, do the 10-foot clearance. Okay. So that's usually identified when our station personnel in these areas go out on June 2nd to do the inspections, and that's when they identify those lots. Additionally, even though the fire department only does inspections from June to about September, hazard reduction is a required 12-month program. It's set by the state. So in fact, CAL FIRE inspects properties 365 days a year. We don't do that. What we do is we switch to a complaint-based. So we can, if we receive a citizen complaint, we will investigate that as well. So either it'll be identified by a station personnel doing their annual inspections, or if a neighbor has a concern, we'll go out and verify that as well.
Okay. And then the next question is there any kind of grant money or assistance programs to help homeowners that might not be able to afford to hire some help clearing their lot?
The short answer is not that I know of. That is actually one of the things my partner Bree and I are actively researching, is to find monies to assist with that. We, on our website, we do have a list under the hazard reduction of service providers. They're local individuals who, some of them do this as a side job, some of them just do it as their job, some of them are retired, and and it gets them out and about. So what people can do is they can contact these folks. They've been through a class with us every year where we update them on our requirements, walk them through exactly what we expect in an effort to make it easier on the homeowners. They can be contacted. We have to tread carefully with that because we don't want to interrupt their business model. But if we could find a way to secure some sort of grant money to reduce the cost to low income or senior citizens, that's what we're trying to find. Unfortunately, grants they kind of come and go as the needs, as the state deems or the organizations deem. So it's on our radar, but it's probably one of our bigger challenges.
That's interesting. Okay, well, I'm glad that you're looking into that. So the next question is, who does defensible space along the evacuation roads? So I know, like Mill Potrero Highway here, that's a county road.
Mm-hmm.
Who
the county. So if it's a county maintained road, the county is required, our roads department. If a citizen is concerned about it, they can contact excuse me, they can contact either us or the roads department. And if it's us, we will personally contact the roads department and talk to them about it. If it's a driveway on private property, say, or it's an easement through property, it's the property owner, or say PG&E had an easement, it would be PG&E's responsibility to maintain that road.
Okay, that's great. Okay, and then somebody's asking down by the 5 freeway in Lebec, there's areas where there's dead trees and knee-high weeds that run all along the freeway. So who's responsible for clearing that? And do you know if there's any plans to have it cleared?
So that's in I-5 is an interstate road. So that's actually, technically it's a federal road. So it's the federal government that have to do that. I do know that, they contract with Caltrans, the state, to deal with that. As far as dead trees, like I said, we have the state, as far as I'm aware, there are no requirements as far as removing dead trees, unless they were some sort of, hazard to life, say at a park, where people will congregate. But as far as the actual roads, the side of the I-5 road, that would be Caltrans. And obviously that's a large road. I see them mow often, but they're doing the best they can with what they got. But they could always call, they can always call Caltrans. Obviously Caltrans has a higher, they don't work for us. Basically, they work for the state. So we could talk to them in a friendly manner, but we have no authority over their actions. So.
Okay, so it's hit or miss whether they do it or not.
Right.
Okay, so I have 2 questions on this next topic, and that's about how to get your neighbors to create defensible space on their property and basically clear their lots. And what I understand from what you said previously, we're not asked to, clear the lot of a neighbor if they're not there.
Mm-hmm.
And that, if I understand defensible space, it's really just to protect your structure and give the firefighters a chance to safely operate on your property. Is that right? So it doesn't matter if the neighbor's lot is cleared or not?
That's exactly right. And this is actually, this is a vital point, and I'm glad you brought this up. A lot of people see defensible space as something that it's not intended for. It is exactly what you said. It is intended to give our firefighters a chance to get between the fire and a structure or a building or a property line and make a stop. It's not designed to keep fires from happening. It's not designed to, protect everything. It's really just, a fire is a force of nature. It's just like a flood. It's just like, a tornado. The members of Kern County Fire Department are some of the hardest workers and most dedicated people I've ever seen, but we're still only human, so the hazard reduction programs, the key point of the hazard reduction program is to give us a chance, We do during the beginning hours of a fire, we do what is called triage, where the engines that are there do a rapid assessment, and they look at a road, they'll look at a house, they'll look at a lot of different factors, and they'll have to make a snap decision whether they can get in there, where there's space to get between a fire and a house. And if they can't, much as they'd want to, they'll have to move on to the next one. So what they will do is, if the community gives us a chance, we will do everything we can. But at the same time, there are limits to what we can do. We're just asking that you guys, help us, and give us a better chance.
Okay, that's great. Okay, we've got a lot of questions. I want to try to get through them a little faster here.
Sure.
One of the question is that somebody last year put weed killer to kill the weeds along Mil Potrero Highway, which is a county road, and then they left the dead weeds there. So besides the dead weeds being a hazard, is the weed killer chemical flammable? And does that create more of a dangerous situation?
To be honest, I would have to know what the chemical is, and I don't. So I can't really comment on that.
So the answer is maybe.
The answer is, I don't know.
Maybe, okay.
Yeah.
All right, so somebody, I've got a bunch of questions on chat here.
Sure.
What does the law say about defensible space, and what are ladder fuels? Oh, that's a good question. What are ladder fuels?
So if you go to our website, the kerncountyfire.org, all the requirements on there for hazard reduction, those are either state law or county ordinances. Okay. So those are the requirements, and I touched on them a little bit with the 30 and the 70-foot defensible space requirements. Those are broad strokes for those, but to get the detail, there's a lot of information in that hazard reduction tab that I would highly recommend people go to. Now, ladder fuels are actually that's an important topic too. So basically what a ladder fuel is you have some sort of natural vegetation, tree most likely, and if they have branches that are overgrown to the point where they're either touching the ground or very close to the ground, if you have a grass fire that's coming along, and say the grass is 2 or 3 inches tall, it'll ignite that branch, and then as it crawls up the branch, it'll light the branch above it, and then above it, and then above it, until it gets to the top of the tree. And then while it's doing that, because obviously wood burns much hotter than grass, it'll preheat trees around it. And then it can create what's called a crown fire, and it hops from tree top to tree top to tree top to tree top. And while leaving the trees on the ground, or the bottom part of the tree untouched. And quite honestly, that is the most devastating type of wildfire for us, because the only thing we can do is cut down a tree to stop that. And if you have, we just don't have the manpower for that. We'd be cutting down a whole forest. So ladder fuels are critical. And our ordinance says to remove branches off of trees, limb them up from the ground up, minimum of 6 foot. Unless it's a small tree, then it's just a third of the height of the tree. We're not asking you to strip your tree and, you know, and kill it, basically. But so if you know, fire is a natural element, it's healthy for the forest. And what it does is it'll punk along in the ground and it'll burn the grass and it'll open seed pods and things like that. And that's fine. And we can get in there and we can fight that. The heat and the flame lengths are much more manageable for us than if it gets into heavy timbers like wood. Even a dead down tree is a harder fight than a light brushy grass fuel. So, but that's the main point of the ladder fuels is to keep them out of the crowns of the trees.
Okay, and then the last question is, somebody is asking why we don't use the 200-foot clearance like they do in LA County for high-risk areas, because we certainly are a high-risk area.
True. So a little clarification as far as high risk goes. So SRA stands, and I should have clarified this earlier, I apologize, stands for State Response Area. So the county of Kern is a contract city with CAL FIRE. So there's CAL FIRE in the majority of the state, but here, Santa Barbara, Ventura, LA, they have their own county fire departments, but they're still, they still have state response areas. So we are subject to CAL FIRE's rules in those, and that they're the ones that are requiring that. Fire severity zones are areas that can be in the SRA, may not be in the SRA, that are deemed, and to be honest, I'm not sure who categorizes them, but it deems the level of threat. So you can have an area in this SRA that may be a moderate hazard, or you can have an area in the local area, like the area around Boron is a good example. It's in the local area, but it's considered high hazard. So, so what we do is we're trying to walk a line here. We're trying to provide safety while trying to be good neighbors. I can't speak to as the exact reason why we don't have a 200-foot clearance. I just know that the Board of Supervisors adopted the CAL FIRE guidelines with some minor modifications, such as only doing it 8 months out of the year versus 12. They are required to have a handwritten paper citation that they physically go on people's property, put on a door in their mailbox. The Board of Supervisors was not comfortable with us going on private property without permission, which I fully support. And so what we do is we do an electronic version, which is mailed to avoid, any kind of trespassing problems. So my suspicion is that they didn't want to infringe on anybody's, personal rights, but while still being diligent in keeping the public safe. And this is what this compromise is what they decided.
And let me add to that, Engineer Redstone, that does not mean that individuals cannot do above and beyond what has been locally adopted. If you feel that you have a large property, or there's large properties bordering yours, and that you want to go above and beyond that 100-foot defensible space, you want to create a large barrier, there's nothing preventing you from doing so. And even if you have a very large property and others have large properties and they have vacant properties, that 200-foot requirement like you see in LA County still does not mean that vacant lot would have to be 100% cleared down. It still may only reach the threshold of needing to have that 10-foot cleared along the property lines. So it really all comes down to is that balance of reasonableness. And if there's something that you're feeling unsafe about, you want to go above and beyond for your property, that's great, and maybe you can encourage others to do the same.
Yeah. Okay. And I have one last question. And that's when the deadline for clearance comes and goes, then does the fire department actually come around and look at the properties and issue some kind of citation or warning notice or something to properties that haven't been cleared?
Yes. So it's a multi-step process. So we send out a courtesy notice, like I mentioned, which just basically is a summary of the guidelines that are required. And if you receive the notice, you are in the SRA. If you have any concerns, like I said, you can go on our website at kerncountyfire.org, look up your property just to be sure. Now, again, it doesn't necessarily mean you are required to do hazard reduction if you have a vacant lot, for example, again. But so you will get that notice by ordinance, has to be 30 days minimum before the inspection deadline, which is always June 1st. It's required. And then after June 1st, usually the 2nd, the stations will go out. And so we have 3 shifts. They work 48 hours each shift. So we give each shift at least 2 shifts minimum. Sometimes we try to give them 3 shifts because it's the middle of fire season. They're very busy. They have a lot of duties right now. We're trying to, again, everything is a balance with us. So we will give them the amount of time required. They use this fire inspection app that we have. And if it's compliant, it'll be marked compliant, and then no further action will be needed. There will be no notification. If there is a violation or several, we will mark what those are. We will take pictures, which will be included. That is required. If you receive a citation with no pictures, you let us know, and it has to be dismissed. We have to have evidence that this is as they say it is. We will receive that. We collect them about once a month. So at the end of June, we will then mail those out to the people. And those are citations. They're $500. You will still have 15 days to mitigate the problem. And then if you email us pictures that the problem has been mitigated, the citation is dismissed. So say you received a violation for pine needles on your roof, and you went up there and you blew all the pine needles off your roof. You took a picture, you emailed it to us. We will dismiss the citation. Okay, so we will do that for the month of June, and then in the month of July, what they do is the properties that still have a violation on them, that no corrective action was taken, that we have no evidence that any property owner had done anything, they will go out to verify that those same hazards still exist, and they can get a secondary citation, and that one is for $1,000. Again, they have an additional 15 days to do the same thing, to present evidence. Now, the one thing that has to be said is once they receive the $1,000 citation, the $500 one cannot be revoked. It is now permanent. So now they're just trying to remove the $1,000 one. And then again, so the 15 days, and then once the 15 days expires, then that one also becomes permanent. I will say that's a minimum. In practice, due to fires and the busy schedule and just the sheer amount of properties they have to inspect, it usually goes into August, and maybe even early parts of September. So it's usually 15 days is a minimum. It's usually more like 3+ weeks to do the work. And again, we're after compliance. We're trying to keep our neighbors, and our citizens safe. So we're not, if we get it a day or two late, we're not going to punish anybody for that. So, and now once that's done, if the $1,000 is set, then either the homeowner can either pay. If they don't pay, it will eventually become a lien on the property and be put on the property taxes. And then the following year, we start all over. It's just like the slate is clean. They'll start with an inspection. It'll be the 515 days, 1,015 days. So every year it's like it's a fresh start.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. That was really great information. So We're running out of time here for more questions. And if you have any, please, I see there's a couple more in the chat and I'll check them over and make sure they get to Matt and to Andrew. But David, before you introduce the next speaker, I want you to know that Brian, take as long as you need for your presentation and we will keep recording and we will still be here. So no necessary to rush it.
Okay, great. Thank you for that clarification. And man, that was a lot of information. I'm glad it's written down someplace other than where I am, because I'm going to have to go look it up just to say that I know it. And like Julia said, please, if you have a question, please write it down, put it on Facebook Live or put it in this Zoom chat, and we will get an answer for you as quickly as possible. And now, Brian Sprinkle is our next speaker. He's project manager with Southern California Edison, and he has more on the defensible space. So, Brian, if you would. Oh, you got to unmic. There you go. There you go.
There we go. I think that I was
Hello.
getting there. Sorry about that. Well, thank you, David and Julia. Thanks for having me a part of this meeting today. Really excited to be engaged with the community and kind of chat about some of the things that Southern California Edison's doing to prevent against wildfires and reduce our risk around our infrastructure and the communities that we serve. So just kind of at a high level in terms of defensible space, and I'll get into the nuts and bolts of how our program ties in with the defensible space conversation. But Southern California Edison, we maintain and manage approximately 50,000 miles of overhead infrastructure and actively manage on an annual basis over 1 million trees. So a lot of trees, a lot of wire, and a lot of different processes and procedures that we take to reduce our threat, wildfire threat, and reduce outages and increase public safety. So breaking down our individual tree-related programs, we have our routine compliance program. That's you'll see our folks out in the neighborhoods routinely trimming trees that are around the power lines. We do that on an annual basis, and that's really to just keep that defensible space around our infrastructure open, so that way we don't have a tree line conflict. We also have our hazard tree mitigation program, which we send ISA certified arborists out to identify trees with specific risk-related factors that may warrant a tree or a part of a tree to fail in coming into contact with an energized conductor. So we do that on a routine basis. We also have our drought resolution initiatives, which is the identification of diseased dead trees around our infrastructure that could fall, potentially causing an outage or a potential wildfire, which could increase the risk for public safety. We also have our weed abatement program, which we mitigate weeds on Edison-owned lands. And we also have a pretty extensive pole brushing program that we implemented a few years ago. We identified that during wildfires, or the risk for wildfires, even brush fires for that matter, we lost a lot of infrastructure just due to brush load or weeds around the base of a pole. So we've identified that as an area of improvement. We've started removing all the brush and woody vegetation around the bases of our poles to prevent that defensible space, to protect our infrastructure from damage, thus expediting the restoration process post-wildfire when those events do occur. So that's a high level, all of our different programs that we have here at Southern California Edison to approach trees in a variety of ways to, one, increase public safety, two, reduce wildfire risk, and stay within state and federal regulations as it pertains to utility vegetation management practices. A concept that we've implemented and we're working towards implementing on a broader scale is the concept of integrated vegetation management. That is the ideology of taking all of these different approaches to incorporate into our program to provide the most sustainable, economical, and reliable program. Our long-term vision, my long-term vision, essentially my career goal, is to create that 100-year vision of what infrastructure and tree-related corridors look like. And some of the things that we've really been approaching and experimenting with over the past few years is mechanical removal, utilizing a variety of different tools and machinery to remove vegetation brush, trees, things of that matter around our infrastructure to, one, increase safety for our workforce, and two, expedite the process. Another thing that we're looking into right now, and I'm really excited about sharing, it's still in its infancy stages, is utilizing goats and sheep for clearing brush and other vegetation along our infrastructure. Goats and sheep are really good at getting into places that people are not as good to get into. The mountainous areas within the Sierra National Forest and Sierra Mountain Range. They are skilled at climbing on rocks and getting some of these brush where we just don't have the skill sets to do so in the most appropriate way. We've also been targeting a lot of brush removal within our IVM program. We've identified that if we can clear our rights of way out and reduce the fuel load with the brush and trees and other woody vegetation within our area of operation, with us, we can reduce the fuel within those areas and reduce the fire risk associated with that fuel loading as well. A couple of things I wanted to point on too, or just talk about, is just understanding trees in relation to overhead infrastructure as the right tree, right place, right? For some trees have the genetic propensity to grow, and here in California, 300 feet, right? So a sequoia, a giant sequoia, the best growing place for instance, a giant sequoia would not be underneath the power lines. But underneath the power lines, maybe a crepe myrtle or a low-growing shrub or some type of perennial form would grow underneath the power lines or near our infrastructure into perpetuity, and we would never have to worry about that coming into contact with our energized conductors, right? So just recognizing what the right tree, right place is a key component of getting to that 100-year vision. And we can't get there without the help of the general public. Another thing to think about too is that, if there is a tree that you think may be a good candidate for removal that's near our infrastructure, give the Edison hotline a call. We would be more than happy to send out one of our trained representatives to go and check the tree out, see if it's something that we can handle, or if we find that there's a need, we can remove that tree or other vegetation around our infrastructure if it falls within our scope, and help the community out by doing that. And also, we do have tree replacement programs. If there's a tree that's problematic that we find that's in a really good spot, we have the opportunity in some situations to partner with communities to replace trees with the right tree, to provide the right tree for the right place, to rebuild that urban forest and provide back. And that's on a case-by-case basis, depending on the situation. So I know I've ran through a lot of stuff there real quickly, but I really want to just reinforce that, we are a partner with the community. We're a partner with Kern County Fire. I worked alongside a lot of the Kern County Fire Department representatives on both the Creek Fire and the Sequoia Complex Fire. And we want to partner with all parties involved to get to the same goal that we're chatting about here, is defensible space, and not only around our houses, our homes, and our communities, but the infrastructure that keeps us going on a day-to-day basis, right? We really like that feeling when we get home and we can turn the light switch on and the lights turn on, the TV turns on. That all revolves around everything that we're chatting about. And like Mr. Redstone said, we live in a fire climactic ecosystem. All of these tree species and plant species revolve around the process of fire within their life cycle. And we have to do our due diligence to recognize what we can do as a team here to mitigate the risk to what we do within our area of operation and our lifestyles to come to the same collective goal to benefit not only our communities, but the ecosystem as well. So, Julie, I ran through that really fast, but I'll pass it back over to you if there's any questions so far. And I can also provide you, Julia, with my contact info. For anyone that wants to reach out, you can provide my email address and we can chat about it in detail.
That'd be great, Brian. Thank you. Can you add that to our chat on the Zoom
Yes.
chat? That would be great. And then
Yes, I can.
I will save the chat box because there's a lot of links. Matt put a lot of links in there, so I'll post the links on the Facebook page, and then it'll also, once we get this video up on our website, we'll post those links there as well so that you can have them. So you pretty much answered I had several questions, but you pretty much answered all of them in one go. And that was basically, what would be a dangerous situation around the utility poles and wires that we as residents should report, and who do we contact to make those reports? But you've answered those questions. So if anybody else has any questions, feel free to unmute yourself. and turn your video on and feel free to ask a question. Or put it in the chat. We're still doing that. So there's a question here. Kara, I'm not sure if you meant this question for Brian. What more can be done to prevent PSPS? I don't know what that means.
Public safety power shutoff. I'm the vegetation expert. I'm not the expert on PSPS events. But you can reach out to our Edison hotline or research on our website to find more information on PS events. There are routine town hall meetings that our executive leadership hold that goes over PSPS events in great detail. Definitely jump on one of those and find out more information. But I can't speak on PSPS events. I can speak on the trees. I know those in and out, but that's a couple sources you can look out for PSPS events.
Okay, so I know the last webinar we had the speaker from Southern California, Edison, and he did say that that program where they're replacing all the poles and the wires is coming to an end shortly, and then they're now going to be doing air inspections, flying over, doing drone inspections, looking at everything to see if they missed anything. But he said that should either be coming to an end or slowing way down, like about now.
Yep, that's on the transmission and distribution side. But what I can say about that is that from a utilities perspective, routinely, there are grid upgrades or grid hardening projects that happen. And although the bulk majority of those may be slowing down, they're still going to be identifying areas of improvement or infrastructure of improvement that they can focus in on to replace with upgraded and up-to-date infrastructure. So yeah, that's a routine process that happens throughout the perpetuity of what we do.
Yeah, I know a lot of people are like very unhappy when the wind blows and they shut the power off. So that's probably what the question is referring to.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if there's any answer to that. Anyway, if anybody has any more questions that we haven't addressed, or you wake up tomorrow and you think of something you wanted to ask, please feel free to post it in the Facebook comments section under the video, and I'll make sure it gets to the proper speaker so we can get an answer for you. Okay, David, back to you.
Okay. All right. Well, that's all the time we have, and we came in pretty close to when we said we were going to be. That's good. Tonight's topic, defensible space. It's also available in written form on our page at kernfiresafe.org. Click on the other resources on the home page and choose the defensible space link, and you can get a defensible space brochure from the California Fire Safe Council. Now, with June 1st clearance deadline coming up, Kern Fire Safe Council is dedicated to preparing our communities for wildfires. KernFireSafe.org is a nonprofit, community-based volunteer organization, and we need your help. Together we can accomplish so much more. So join us, give us a call, getting involved. That's being a proactive member of the community. And these are all small communities, and so one pair of hands can do an awful lot and lighten the load for everyone around. Now, our topic for the April webinar, which is set for April 27th, is propane safety. And since most of us are on that, it'll be a good one to be at. Thank you for your participation, all of you. And remember, we're never out of the woods when it comes to fire, because we live in a forest. Thank you.
Okay, I stopped recording. Thanks everybody for being here. We really appreciate it. And to our speakers, thank you so much. It was such valuable information.
Yeah, that was great.
I saved the chat, and I will then later on or tomorrow post all of these links. And thank you so much, Matt, for all these links. That's a lot of information.
Yeah, Julia, well, will you with the guys?
We are still live on Facebook.